Welcome to HorrorBabble. Werewolves and Dogmen continues today with a previously unpublished work by the enigmatic C.P. Howard. Mr. Davis walks at midnight. When a reserved man named Mr. Davis moves to a quiet village street, his curious midnight outings stir suspicion in a watchful neighbor. And without further ado, Mr. Davis Walks at Midnight by C.P. Howard. Discovered among the personal effects of the late Mr. R.H. Meacham of Thornbridge, North Yorkshire. October 6th. It's been just over a week since the man moved in across the street, and I confess I've found myself curiously preoccupied with him. His name, according to the estate agent's sign, removed the morning after he arrived, is Mr. Davis. He keeps to himself. No introductions, no idle chat over fences, no pets, children, or sign of a wife. He's a strange-looking fellow, unusually tall and broad, with large hands and a grey, oblong face. He's not a Yorkshireman, that's for sure. The house he's taken, a damp little brick affair with ivy up the side and a listing chimney, is one that stood empty for a long while. A grim dwelling it is. The weather's turned early this year, and with the rain come the fogs, thick coils of it, rolling in from the fields after sundown and settling over the road like something alive. You can't see 10 feet from the window once night falls. It was during one of these fog-bound nights, perhaps the third since Mr. Davis moved in, that I first noticed the pattern. Midnight, exactly. The door opens and out he steps, dressed in black, boots, coat, gloves, and walks without hesitation down the narrow lane towards the old railway bridge. I've watched him do this every night since. Same time, same direction, and always alone. I mentioned it to the butcher, Mr. Lawton, this morning while collecting my order. He muttered something about the devil's hour and made a poor attempt to laugh it off. But he leaned in after, with an ugly expression on his face, and said, "They say there's things on them paths at night. Dogs, but not dogs. You've heard the stories. Black Shuck, Hound of Hell, call it what you like. Keep your curtains shut, Mr. Meacham." I nodded, made polite noises, and took my leave. But the words have stayed with me. Dogs, but not dogs. I'm not a credulous man. I've never placed much stock in folklore. Still, it has a way of settling in the mind, doesn't it? Especially when the fog presses in against the glass and you hear the crunch of footsteps outside. Tonight, I will watch again. I want to be sure. October 8th. I followed him. I told myself I wouldn't. I was downstairs with the lights on, listening to the wireless and pretending not to care. But when the old clock on the mantel chimed 12, I was at the window again, peering through the curtains like some wretched snoop. And there he was, Mr. Davis, locking the door behind him, coat buttoned, big hands in pockets, vanishing into the fog. There was no plan. I threw my jacket on and stepped out, the cold air meeting me like a smack. The street was deserted. No wind, only the hush of low fog, and the distant, intermittent hoot of an owl in the woods. I kept to the opposite side, creeping along and barely breathing. The man didn't look back, not once. He walked with purpose along Blackthorn Lane, past the ruined gate of the old vicarage, and into the hollow where the trees crowd thickest. I hesitated at the tree line. Something in my gut turned cold. I could scarcely see him, a shadow moving deeper into the dell. Nothing to illuminate his way, only the gentle thump of his boots on the soft earth. Then, nothing. I don't mean I lost sight of him. I mean he was gone, swallowed by the woods. I stood frozen under the crooked limbs of the yew trees, eyes straining through the gloom. Then I heard it, a sound like breathing, wet and heavy, close, and something else, a low growl, so low it seemed to come from the very ground. It shivered through me, rattling my teeth. I backed away slowly, careful not to disturb the fallen twigs. And that's when I saw it. There was a shape at the top of the ridge beyond the dell. It was black and resembled a dog, an unnaturally large dog. Its eyes shone a dull crimson in the fog. The thing watched me. I'm certain it wasn't Mr. Davis, but it had something of the man's bearing, the tall frame, the broad shoulders. I don't remember turning, or how I got home, only that I locked the door behind me and checked it twice. I've had enough for now. October 9th. I went out again tonight. I hadn't intended to, truly. After what I saw the night before, a saner man might have drawn his curtains and minded his own affairs. But dusk came early, and with it the fog, low and pale like breath on glass, and I felt it again, that strange compulsion, that awful pull, as if Mr. Davis wanted to be followed. Once again, he left the house at midnight precisely. This time, I was already outside. I kept close to the hedgerows, breathing through my scarf, watching his shape drift ahead like a shadow given purpose. The night air was sharp, biting at the lungs, and the village lay utterly still. No cars on the road, no cats in the gloom, not even the usual clatter from the pub's bins. And still I followed. Instead of the wooded track, Mr. Davis turned right at the War Memorial and sauntered into the heart of the village towards High Street. I followed at a discreet distance. I could hear his footfalls ahead, but I never saw him clearly. Always a murky phantom in the fog, just out of sight. Thornbridge isn't a big village, but it's old. The kind of place that's been here long enough to forget its own founding. The houses cluster tightly along crooked lanes, each one leaning inwards as if whispering secrets. Old coach lamps flicker above doors that haven't been opened in generations. But tonight not a single lamp burned. The village was empty, as though it had been hastily cleared to accommodate some private, ancient ritual. As I passed the chapel, I paused. The fog thickened suddenly, curling in slow circles across the cobbles. The street lamps here give off a sickly yellow glow, but their light barely pierced the haze. When I looked ahead again, Mr. Davis was gone. I waited. Nothing. No sound, no movement, no sense of direction. I'd lost him. I stood for several minutes beneath the rusty sign belonging to the old bakery, straining my chilled ears. And, just as I turned to go back, I heard it, far off at first, then closer. A noise, an unsettling noise, a scream. It wasn't the high, clear scream of a child, or the panicked roar of someone caught in a fight. This was low, guttural, almost gurgled. And yet there was something human in it, something failing, like the last desperate utterance of someone trying to yell with a crushed windpipe. Before I realized what I was doing, I was moving in its direction. The scream had come from one of the alleys near Bleeker's Yard, the oldest part of the village, where the buildings stand a little shorter, and the passageways between them are scarcely wide enough to accommodate a man. As I entered the lane, the fog had become so thick I could barely see the walls on either side. My breath came fast now, loud in the hush. Something in me begged to turn back. And then I stepped in it. Something wet. I froze, looked down. There was blood on the old stones, a broad, smeared arc of it, trailing from the wall to the gutter, dark, nearly black in the lamplight. and beside it, dear God, bits of something once alive. Skeletal fragments mostly, splinters of rib, a broken forelimb still slick with sinew. At first I thought them animal, perhaps a fox or deer, though how either could be torn to pieces there in that tight alley, I couldn't say. But there were other signs, too. A scrap of what looked like denim, shoe rubber, a knuckle, and prints. Not footprints, not really. More like drag marks produced by pads or claws. 4 distinct impressions smeared in the blood, as though whatever had committed this appalling deed had paused there, squatted in the filth, and surveyed its work. I turned and fled. I refused to look back. I don't know if I was followed. I only know that I ran until the fog thinned, and the church tower loomed out of it like a sentinel. I cut through the graveyard, past the yew trees, and reached the house with legs like lead. I can't sleep. The relentless fog presses against the window. There's something in that alley still. I can feel it. Tomorrow I'll go to the library. There's an old folk tale I remember, something my grandmother once told me about a spectral dog that walks the moors at night. I must learn all I can before it comes again. October 10th. I spent the better part of the afternoon at the parish library, and the hours passed like smoke. I must have read every article on local superstitions, every yellowed clipping labelled folklore. Most of it was nonsense, but something caught my eye, something old and unwholesome, predating the legend of the so-called Black Dog by centuries. They called it the Churchyard Grim in one place, a creature said to haunt the graves of suicides and the unshriven, standing watch over cursed earth. In others, it's Old Shock, Hairy Jack, Barguest, Padfoot, black, large, and always, in some form or another, a harbinger. Most accounts agree on several things: glowing red eyes, the scent of brimstone or decay, and a tendency to appear to solitary travellers at crossroads or on moorland paths. Some say it walks ahead of you, leading you to your death. Others claim it follows, sniffing at your heels until you're overwhelmed by dread. A few rare tales, half lost, speak of the thing's ability to transform itself into a man. Later, I learned that a boy was reported missing 2 nights ago. Last seen leaving the pub after a late shift, walking the lower track past Hollow Field, the same direction Mr. Davis takes each night. Coincidence? I'm not ready to draw conclusions. That would be premature. There are probably thousands of black dogs in North Yorkshire, and most of them, no doubt, are simply that. But I noticed something this morning that I can't explain. My garden gate was unlatched, and there were prints on the frosted grass, 4-toed, leading up to the back door. And there, just above the handle, was a single scratch, as though something had clawed at the wood. I'll sleep lightly tonight. There's a sound out there, like panting. I keep telling myself it's the wind through the chimney, but I know the difference. I know. October 13th. I can't deny it now. I've seen it with my own eyes. I wasn't dreaming. Can't put it down to an overactive imagination. It was real. God help me, it was real. Tonight, I witnessed the transformation of Mr. Davis. I use the name still, but it no longer fits the thing that wears his shape. He's not a man, not holy. Perhaps he never was. The day passed in a haze. I drank too much tea, paced the floorboards until they groaned beneath me, listened to the old house creak in sympathy with my nerves. Something in me knew that tonight would bring an answer, and I approached the hour like a condemned man approaches the scaffold. The fog came early, clinging low to the hedgerows and pooling thick under the lamplight. The cold had a sharpness to it, a smell like split stones and coal smoke. At 11:50, I extinguished the lamps in the house and established myself at the spare bedroom window, where once provided a narrow view of the house opposite. And at the stroke of midnight, he emerged. The door opened in perfect silence. Mr. Davis stepped out, coat wrapped tightly about him, shoulders hunched against the cold. There he paused, stock still beneath the lintel, head bowed. And then something unexpected. Looking from left to right, his grey face inscrutable, he slowly removed his gloves. His large hands proceeded to grip his coat, and off it came. Then, piece by piece, the remainder of his clothes, folding them with meticulous care and placing them atop the low stone wall beside the gate. A strange thing to do, even for a man in the throes of madness. He stood there in the fog, naked as the dead, yet unfazed by the chill. And then he knelt. At first I thought he had fallen ill, collapsed from some sudden ailment, but his arms were all wrong, stretched forwards on the flagstones, elbows jutting at unnatural angles. His spine began to rise, vertebra by vertebra, as though something within were pushing outwards. There was a sound like twig snapping in a frozen forest. Then came the first of the cries, a strange, inhuman cry, a choking, low-throated bark followed by a sound that set every hair on my body standing, a growl that seemed to come from within the walls of my house, though I knew it came from across the street. His skin darkened, grey, then deepening to black. Fur sprouted across his back, coarse and sparse at first, then thickening with alarming speed, as though growing from some subterranean pressure. His limbs contorted, knees bent backwards, arms shortened and swelled, his mouth split, jawline yawning open into a canine snout bristling with fresh, wet teeth. The whole thing couldn't have taken more than a minute, yet it felt like an hour had passed. When it stood again, it was no longer Mr. Davis. It was a thing that had once worn his flesh, a massive, hound-like beast. The legs were too long, the shoulders sloped like a carrion bird's, the back arched with a tension that suggested violence held barely in check. And its eyes, dear God, the eyes, were the worst of it. They glowed with that dull, hellish red one hears about in tales whispered over winter fires, the colour of dark, smouldering coals. It sniffed the air, then bounded off into the fog with wicked, inhuman grace. I remained at the window, paralyzed, and as I stood there, a terrible thing occurred to me. I'd read of such shocking transformations before. In Suffolk, they say black shuck travels the coastal paths, appearing to those soon to die. In Norfolk, it's said to walk through walls, to melt into shadow, to stalk the lonely with noiseless footfall. Here in Yorkshire, they call it the Barguest, a monstrous dog with flaming eyes that tears at its victims beneath the gallows tree. But one story in particular spoke of a man who was not merely followed by such a creature, but became it. A cursed line, a blood-bound pact. He would go by day in his human form, living among the innocent, and at night his body would twist into that of the hound. He would hunt for something owed, some tithe, some hunger older than memory. It was said such creatures could be identified by their solitude, by their midnight wanderings, by the strange decay that seemed to follow them. And this I had forgotten. They couldn't bear the touch of iron, not common steel, but true iron, of the kind forged before the world grew soft. I left the window only when the cold in my bones became too much to bear. I don't know how long I stood there. I only know that when I turned from the glass, I caught sight of my reflection and flinched. For a moment, I thought there was another set of eyes beside mine in the pane. The thing called Mr. Davis returned just before dawn, naked, limbs trembling as he dressed himself on the stoop. There was blood on his hands, not much, but enough to glisten in the half-light. I don't think he saw me, and yet, when he turned to re-enter his house, he paused very briefly and looked directly towards my window. That ghastly, grey face! Final entry. Date unspecified. There's something in the garden. I heard it just after dusk, a low rustle in the hedgerow, followed by the sharp snap of twigs. I froze, listening, every muscle in my body tensed like wire. Then silence, a long, deliberate silence. I've bolted the windows, drawn the curtains, shoved the bookcase against the front door, and dragged the oak sideboard across the kitchen door. Every lamp is lit, and I've laid the old fire poker, iron from the fireplace tools, across my lap as I write this. I'll not go down without a fight. I've been targeted. I feel it in my bones. I saw him again, Mr. Davis, or whatever he truly is, this morning. The man was in his garden, sweeping up the leaves. He looked up at me, smiled, a faint curling of the mouth, but the smile was the kind a snake might give before it strikes. We locked eyes, and for a moment the morning seemed too still. No bird song, no cars, just the thin mist between us and the weight of something unsaid. He knows I saw. He wants me to know. There are stories, half buried, scattered across pamphlets and old parish letters, about what happens when the black dog chooses you. It's not like being hunted by a beast. It's a matter of fate. It follows you, in dream, in omen, in whisper. It becomes part of your world. They used to say it was a psychopomp, one of those grim things that walk beside the soul as it leaves the body. But others knew the truth. The dog is a collector. Some are snatched in an instant, ripped from the world like weeds from soil. Others are warned, given signs, time to repent, time to fear. And those it warns, it plays with. It comes closer every night, leaves signs, scratches, prints on the window pane, a wait on the roof at midnight, a voice, your name, whispered just outside the door. The village is no help. They call me mad now. Even Lawton wouldn't meet my eyes today. He said his niece, the girl who works evenings at the off-license, hasn't been home for 2 nights. The police shrugged. Run off, they said. Lover's tiff. I didn't tell him what I found this morning, outside my back door. A trail of paw prints in the frost. They circled the house 3 times, like a ritual. And at the center of them, laid neatly like a rose on a tombstone, was the girl's locket, bent and stained. There are other signs, too. When I close my eyes, I dream of fields I've never walked, under skies too close and dark. I run, barefoot, through heather and bone. The air is thick with a sickly sweet stench, and above me floats a howl of something older than pain or hunger, a joyless ecstasy. And always in these dreams I reach a stone circle. Within it, the dog, waiting, watching. They say the black dog sometimes walks between worlds. It doesn't need to kill you to possess you. It only needs your fear. That's the tithe, the payment. And I've paid in full. The clock strikes now. Midnight. There's breathing outside the door. It's not human. Too deep and wet, like lungs filled with mud. And there's something more. I can feel it moving past the window, a bulk that blots out the light behind the curtains. It's circling again, slow and patient. The poker trembles in my hand. There's a poem I once read, tucked into the margin of a forgotten volume on the Bar Guest of Whitby. I thought it was a folk charm at the time, or a madman's scribble. If the dog comes once, you're blind. If the dog comes twice, you're thinned. If the dog comes thrice, my friend, it's time to let the devil in. I've seen it 3 times. The scratching begins, soft, rhythmic, like claws on stone. I will not open the door. I will not. But I don't think it needs me to. A wind moves through the house, though every door is shut. The light in the hall is out. The fire is dimming. There's a sound now beneath the floorboards. A pacing. No, a waiting. I write this now as a warning. I saw him. I followed him. I learned. That was my sin. The legends are real. They live across the country in hidden lanes and broken places, and sometimes they wear our faces. I don't know what he is, a man who became a beast, or a beast that wears the shape of a man. Perhaps there's no distinction. Perhaps that's the oldest lie of all. There's a final sound now. It's not at the door, it's behind me. If these pages are found, bury them, burn them. Let this be a warning to anyone foolish enough to follow the man who walks at midnight. If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time.